Speak to anyone who's made the move to New Zealand and you'll hear stories about how hard it was to pack the container and how they had to sell the house and it all fell through about 10 days before. But what they don't talk to you about is the very real fears that they felt before they made the decision to move to New Zealand. Never in that group of people have I ever heard anyone say, I moved to New Zealand, I got there, I was broke. In this week's episode, we're going to explore 3 very, very real and honest fears that are often what causes people to just cancel their plans altogether and not make the move to New Zealand. Let's jump on in and find out what those fears are and how we can get past them. NZ Ahead, coming to you from Taranaki, New Zealand.
Got it.
Hello and welcome to the NZ Ahead podcast. I'm Liz.
And I'm Brian.
And today we're going to be talking in this week's show about the fears, some common fears that actually people don't just feel, it actually stops them from moving to New Zealand. So we just thought we would talk about those things now. We are going through them firsthand right now, some of them. And we just thought what better time than to bring you some authentic, real, honest truths about those fears that people feel, that you might be feeling yourself, and just to shed a different kind of light on them.
Yeah, and it's not just like moving to New Zealand. It's if you were thinking of moving to any country, wouldn't it? But, you know, mainly we talk about...
This is called NZ Ahead,
I know, this is why we do. Yeah, but it's like people do have
worldwide
these...
ahead.
Yeah, but sometimes people have several countries they're thinking of moving to, don't they?
Yeah, I suppose so. This applies to the furthest country that you can move to on the other side of the world. I mean, unless you live in Australia.
Yeah.
But it's a long, long way away, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yes.
And these fears are fears that people have. And like I say, it stops them. They come to a block in the road and they're like, okay, no, I can't move past it. And before we start, I just want to say that both of us are addressing these fears with complete compassion and understanding and kindness. I need to say that first of all. I don't want you to think that we're poo-parring your fears, that we are, like, oh, don't be so silly, just move on, get on with it. It's just, I certainly completely understand, and I'm sure I can speak for you too, Bri.
Yeah.
That these fears are very real and very valid. But like I say, hopefully we can. Yeah, well, that's it. The last
14 and a half years, we've just about gone through everything that we're going to talk about. Yeah. And that's our personal experience. And a lot of people that we know go through the same sort of things.
So the number one fear that people tend to have when they think about moving to the other side of the world, moving to New Zealand, is that their kids are not going to have family around them. I mean, not everyone who moves to New Zealand has children, granted, but a lot of them do. We did. And it was one of the big fears that we thought about. And from people who are in our private community, we see this a lot too. Like, how are their kids they're not going to have grandparents. They're not going to have aunties and uncles around them. They're not going to have their cousins. Yeah. And it's that huge thing, isn't it, I think grandparents is the biggest thing. You can kind of like get over aunties and uncles, but grandparents.
Well, it all depends if your grandparents are still around. But the majority of people that tend to want to come to New Zealand are in that age bracket where mum and dad back in England are still,
or wherever you are,
still going, aren't they? And I'm not just saying England, but that's that going off our own personal sort of stuff, and it does become a big fear because we had aunties and uncles that they super close to and everything like that as well. So it can be any of that side of the family, and even just good friends that you've got. But you have to say to yourself, why were we moving in the first place? What were we even thinking about moving? And that's what it comes back from.
Exactly.
It's that drive and that passion to think, I'm going to give my kids a different upbringing than I had. And that's the majority of reasons why people think about moving to the other side of the world, don't they?
I have emails and people, like I say, on the community and things like that, and they will say things like, me and my mum she only lives up the road from me. I see her every day. I drop the kids off at school. After school, I drop the kids off and they spend a couple of hours with her, and, they're really, really close. And the kids are like 5 or 6, 7 or whatever, even older or younger or whatever. But it's just, I can't do that. They say, I can't do that to my mum and to the kids. And here's what we want to say to that. And like I say, this is coming from a place of kindness. Number one, this is your life and your dream and your family. I think, first of all, that it's important to remember that.
Yeah.
This is your family now. You know, just like your parents will have done something to their parents, you know, they might have moved, like my parents, for instance, moved from Lancashire to Cornwall, and that was miles away. We never saw my grandma for years and years on end, but that was because that was my mum and dad's dream. Just like this is your dream to move to New Zealand. So that's number one thing I want to tell you, and I want you to remember that. And number two, coming from experience, again, this is we're through it now. The kids are our kids are 19 and 22, so we're through all that. And I say this to reassure you. This is a really personal thing now. My daughter Tess is 19, and when we took her away from Brian's mum and dad, because my mum lives here in New Zealand, so they had one grandparents here. My mum lives here. But when we took her away from your mum and dad, we went through that exact same fears, didn't we, Bri?
Yeah, but you do. And you wouldn't be human if you didn't.
But she's 19 now. And if you speak to her about her grandma, Brian's mum, who sadly passed away a few years ago, when you speak to her about that, she just wells up with this wonderful amount of memories that she has about your mum.
Yeah.
Your mum came to New Zealand to see her, and she talks about that constantly.
Yeah.
Your mum wrote her letters every week. They were on the phone all that, they spoke a lot. She sent little gifts through the post. Now, that doesn't make Tessa and your mum's relationship, just because we live in New Zealand and your mum lived in England, any less important or any less special than the relationship she has with my mum who lived down the road.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the case.
No, it's just different. It's just, you just adapt to that style of relationship, and it was great. Yes, we flew to the US and met her there, and she still remembers that with fondness and everything, doesn't she? And so does Sonny, our son. It doesn't mean that you're never going to see them ever again, or you're never going to be in contact. And that's the main thing. Lots of kids these days love to have that contact just over a phone or whatever it is. And not that physical side of things.
The biggest fear that you have, it's not that you're not going to speak to them, and it's not that you're not going to see them. I know this from experience. It's that they're not going to have a relationship that they can remember.
Yeah.
They're not going to have memories that they can talk about and feel, and they were there, and remember when we did that, and that's the biggest fear you have when you're thinking about taking your kids and dragging them to the other side of the world, away from all the family that they know and love.
Yeah.
That's the biggest fear. But this is what I'm here to reassure. This is what I'm hoping that we can reassure people with this. And I want to give two examples. So my first example was Tess and your mum. And their relationship, like I say, just so warm, so lovely. Sonny with your sister, absolutely so close.
I know. Yeah.
Enormously close to Linda.
Texting each other in whatever time of the day it is.
And yet my sister, who lives here, 8 hours across the coast in New Zealand, never talked to her.
Yeah.
So it's if you've got a relationship with a child and you work on that relationship, it doesn't matter where you live, you're going to have it. You'll make sure that you have it. And so that's the number one. And like I say, please don't take this as me being blasé about it, because I'm certainly not.
It is. I mean, some people, yes, admittedly, don't get on with the parents, so they haven't got a problem. But then the other side of the relationship might get on with their parents, and so it's a torn thing, then, isn't it? Like, it's just like, I hated my mum and dad, but we're not talking about. We're just generalising. And our experience as well,
Well, if you didn't like your mum and dad, you'd be straight on the next.
No, but that's it. You wouldn't even be thinking about this part of the podcast, would you? It's like, I haven't got a problem with mum and dad. I can't stand them. You're like, okay, whatever.
Let's not talk about that. Can we not just go down that route of how you hate your mum and dad?
I know, but I always try and cover all bases, Liz.
But let's face it, this wouldn't be a problem if you hated your mum and dad, would it? Wouldn't be a deliberating.
You'd just be jumping straight to number 2.
So, and the next example I wanted to give you was from my mum's point of view. So my mum, the story is that me and Brian and the kids moved to New Zealand. My sister was already living here in Gisborne. We moved to New Zealand, and a year later, my mum came to see us under the thing of like, I'm coming, and I'm just coming for 6 months.
Traveling the world.
I'm going to travel the world. And she never went home, did she? She loved New Zealand so much. I mean, if I'm honest, it was mum that convinced us to move to New Zealand. But anyway, that's a different story. But she loved New Zealand so much that she stayed.
Yeah.
So it was bliss for me and bliss for my kids, because we had my mum here. But she left my brother and his 4 children, her 4 grandchildren, back in the UK. So she just got on left them, walked away from her relationship, her life with those kids and left them to come to the other side of the world. Now, she's done a podcast about that, and it's a fantastic podcast. It's called The Guilt of Leaving Family Behind. I'll put a link in the description below. But she tells it from her point of view. And we're going to talk about mum later on, because that's number 3 is family tragedy. But yeah, so she talks about it from her side of the thing. What I want to tell you, and I want to reassure you, is those 4 kids that my mum left behind in England. Again, going back to that thing of working on the relationship, making sure that you keep in touch, making sure it takes effort. Of course it does.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, my brother's kids, especially Leo, he's 16, and Joe, who's 19, they text my mum and phone my mum. They're constantly phoning her.
They've been phoning for many years, haven't they?
Yes,
even
they
like
have.
13, 14 years old, because it's that type of relationship. And if you can build that type of relationship with, your grandkids or whatever it is, that's I don't know. It's beneficial for you, because you're going to have more contact than what you do if you live down the road.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's come to light, like I say, we'll talk about it in a while, but it's come to light these last 6 weeks, because we have had a family tragedy, and we have had things going on, illness in the family, and it's at times like this that family all over from the other side of the world and here come together, and it has never been there's never been like apparent that, oh, we're closer to her than you are. It doesn't. It's never been like that.
No,
it's always been equal, and I hate to say it, but if not, Jamie's kids in England are in more contact with my mum now
than our kids here.
Than our kids.
Who only live...
Well, certainly, yeah.
I know,
And I know they see her, Sonny sees her.
That's the thing they do. I mean, Tess,
her.
but she's down in Wellington, but I know that she's in the background.
I know,
texting your mum all the time.
But what I'm saying is there's no winner here.
No, there isn't.
There's no Sonny and Tessa.
It's not better or worse. No,
that's what and that is the point I hope I'm getting over on this podcast is, my kids live here, our kids live here, Jamie's kids don't. But there is no difference in the relationship. Yeah. There is no difference when I speak to Joe and Leo and Heidi and Charlotte in England about their memories that they have with mum. I don't ever think, oh, poor you haven't got the same memories as my kids have got. And they've lived, they don't. They just don't.
No,
I'm telling you that truthfully.
If you look at it as like, once you hit the age of sort of 19 plus, and you're either off to uni or you're off going working or wherever it is you're doing, you don't see your grandparents as much, do you? And I've always looked at it, admittedly, if you do go back, to visit family, when you live in New Zealand, you go back to the UK or USA or South Africa or wherever it is, you then are going to be spending 1 or 2 weeks normally with that said grandparents or grandparents. And that time that you get that quality is probably more than what these people that live there see.
100%.
Because you might only see them at Christmas. You might only see them, birthdays or special occasions, and it's like once in a blue. I know they're there and you could make the effort, but nobody does make the effort.
It comes down to that thing, Bri, that the common thing that everyone always says, and it's quality, not quantity.
Yes.
And it really is. It's never been so true than in this example. It is quality of time that you're spending with those people, those memories you're building. It doesn't take years and years and years of seeing someone for 20 minutes a day to make memories.
No, it doesn't.
It takes quality time that you're spending with that person.
And we're not saying it's better or worse. And we're not, I suppose we're just looking at it at a different point of view, aren't we? And that's the thing.
Yeah. The reason I wanted to make this podcast today is because I know for a fact that those fears are very, very valid. All 3 fears that we're going to talk about. Yeah. And right now we are living them. And, I thought I'm not doing...
But we have lived them for the last 14 years. Maybe, I know...
You wouldn't be doing
the
audience, that person listening on the end of this podcast, I wouldn't be doing you justice if I didn't tell you the truth and reassure you and let you know that it's not the case. Yeah. It really isn't. It's not the case. Or certainly not from where I'm sitting anyway.
Yeah. No, but it's true because, right.
Okay, number 2 that we said was one of the biggest fears that we see coming over time and time again. And this we see quite a lot before people join our private community. They email or they'll leave comments on the podcast or on YouTube, and it will come up again and again and again about money.
Yeah.
about money either not being enough, wages not being enough in New Zealand, and they're going to struggle, or cost of living being too high in New Zealand, together with the fact that you're not going to be earning as much, and I'm just going to be poor and living on the streets and living in a rubbish house, and I'm going to have no money to do anything, and it's all going to go to crap, basically.
Yep.
And what we just said, sorry, I'm going. Do you want to say something?
No, because it's like I've got lots of things flying around in my head, but it's just no, because I need to, you need to sort of set it out about that they are the main fears, because, we have plenty of nurses come over, they're earning similar money in the UK, they come here, but cost of rent is more, they tend not to buy straight away because obviously they need to get their residency or whatever it is. So, you're going to have to rent, and rent here is more expensive than the UK. But again, it depends on where you live.
Yeah.
But wages, again, if you're going to be living in London, it's going to be more expensive to live there. And it's that same type of thing, isn't it?
So here's the thing, before it goes out of my head, because at the moment, thoughts are coming in and out of my head and there's a lot going on. But here's the thing that I want to say.
Yep.
2 things. Number 1, never in all the time that we've been making New Zealand content, and we've had our community now, our private Moving to New Zealand community, there is a beautiful family of people that support each other, come together to be the family that you're, an extra family that you want in New Zealand. So never in that group of people have I ever heard anyone say, I moved to New Zealand, I got there, I was broke, so I came home. Never. No. I've never heard people say, I'm moving back because I've been offered a good job in America,
or it's just not working out.
It's not working out, or if something else has happened. But I've never heard people say, "Oh, I can't believe how poor I am now. I live in New Zealand."
Yeah.
Have you, Bri?
No. And again, that comes down to the lifestyle and the way of living in New Zealand. Really, it does, doesn't it? Because I don't know. I just think, living in the UK, I know what it was like. You're living a hand to mouth sort of type lifestyle where, your mortgage is just about being paid. You are moving forward. You've got to buy a new car and this, that, and the other. And that's the same anywhere in the world to a degree.
Course,
wherever you live. I won't have enough money. It's like, why? What's going to happen when you don't have enough money? And the worst thing is, I'm going to lose the house. I'm going to lose everything that I've worked for all my life, because that's the Western way of life, isn't it? And so those fears are very valid here. Like I was told when I came to New Zealand, it's not the land of milk and honey. And you're like, well, I never actually thought it was going to be, but this is a Kiwi telling me that, streets aren't lined with gold and all that sort of stuff. It's not, the more you work here, the more you earn. That's it. So whatever you put into it, you're going to get back. But the reality of then living in New Zealand, you actually realize that you don't need as much money as what you did back there, because you're not, what are you coming here for?
Well, this is what I just want to say. Well, if I can just jump in there, because you're exactly right. And what Brian's just said as well is about the cost of living and the different, the cost of things. Please, again, we have done oodles, absolutely loads of videos over the last 3 years out there on YouTube, out there on It's a Drama podcast, and also on NZ Ahead podcast, the one you're listening to today. About the cost of living in New Zealand. I mean, we've done interviews with Ryan from Auckland. He's from America. We've done lots of interviews from people from the UK, and they talk about that. So we don't need to go into the details of the cost of living in New Zealand because, like I say, just go and listen to any of those. I'll link to a couple in the show notes. But I think an important thing that you just said, and what I want to continue on, is my 2 points. My first being, I can't remember, and the second, because my head's jumbled, and the second being, why are you moving to New Zealand?
Yeah.
Okay, so you are moving to New Zealand. I know why you're moving to New Zealand, and it's certainly not to get rich. If you wanted to get rich, you wouldn't be moving to New Zealand, let's face it. You want to move to New Zealand.
There's plenty of rich people in New Zealand.
I'm not saying that. But I'm not saying that, Brian. But if I wanted to if I wanted to be a West End, if I wanted to be a star, an actress, I'd go to Broadway or West End.
Yeah.
If I wanted to be rich, I'd go to, I don't know, where else? Where do you go to get rich? Vegas, Dubai,
Dubai, whatever.
Bloody,
that sort of stuff.
one of those countries that
Well,
I'm going to be paid masses of money. I wouldn't come to New Zealand. So that's the first thing. And I don't mean, you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
there.
of course I do, yeah.
The thing I'm saying is you come to New Zealand because you want a different way of life. And that different way of life, there's only one word to describe it. It's the biggest commodity, much better than money, is time.
Yeah.
That is why
And
you
space.
are moving to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Because you want that freedom of, and that's it.
It is. And that's the work-life balance
Yes.
that, you tend to think is, what is a work-life balance? We've got a friend that lives in America, and this is what you were saying, wasn't it? That, you say, hey, we're going to the festival. And this happens in the UK, with
He lives in
Glastonbury.
Kentucky,
Yeah,
doesn't
but this guy lives in Kentucky, and he went to a show which I can't remember what the show was.
It was like an arts and crafts festival
Arts and craft
thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
a weekend-long arts and crafts festival.
Yes, and lots of sort of different bands and
That's
stuff like
right.
that. Not so much country and western, but again, it's all different types. And you hear about the drive to the actual festival, which is a few hours to get parked up and get in, and then a 3 or 4 hour wait to get back out of the car park because the roads are all gridlocked. And you're like, wow, and we have WOMAD here in New Plymouth in Taranaki on the North Island of New Zealand. And you don't really notice it, do you? Because the town
You
is
certainly
just...
wouldn't be queuing for 4 hours
Yeah,
to
but
get
you
in.
don't, do you?
No.
You get parked up and you walk into the park, and it's the whole park is taken over in the city because there's only so many thousands of people that are going to come to the festival. It is in the thousands and tens of thousands. But you don't really feel it in town. You can feel it a little bit, but it's not where everything's just gridlocked. I remember having to go to Glastonbury Festival in the UK to pick up my sister because they were rained off and the buses were cancelled and everything. And, it took me 2 hours just to get there, and then another few hours to drive back out. And I was going down closed roads and going across fords that I shouldn't have been going across. All that sort of stuff just to try and get back to the motorway. And that's never happened here in New Zealand, has it? It's just, it's not so much the infrastructure is different. It's just that the people, it's just not as mad. It's not crazy, is it? It's still got a great atmosphere at the festivals and things, but it's just different.
And you can, and again, going back to that money thing, like I say, just ask yourself what it is that you want out of life. Because, like I said, the last few weeks I've just been reflecting on this so much, and we've talked about this a lot, haven't we?
Yeah,
and
but it's
everyone gets
huge.
caught
Time
up
is
in that
huge.
making money. It's all about the money. It's all about what I've got. It's all about what I can. It's like, no, it's not. It's about time. Life is so short, and it's about time and quality. And yes, of course, I'm not stupid. I don't live on a flipping under a rock. We all need money.
Yeah.
But New Zealand, you can go down to a bit. Well, when we were in Auckland, we went to Auckland once for New Year. And we drove, 20 minutes outside Auckland, and we were on the most beautiful remote beach. Do you remember?
Yeah.
We walked up that river, and everyone was just walking up this big, deep river, and they were getting to this big sand dune. I can't remember where it was now, but it was just...
Yeah, it was good. And you could go swimming in the lake there and everything.
Yeah,
it was
and
amazing,
it was all
wasn't
free. It all free to park, and it was just divine. And I'm using Auckland because I know we talk
It's
a lot...
busiest place,
Yeah,
isn't
it is. And I don't want you to think, but you just live in New Plymouth, so no one ever goes there. So it's just that thing, I think, of just don't forget, don't be bamboozled and forget why it is you're moving here in the first place.
Yeah,
because
it's huge.
by the end of your life, when you get to the end of your life, you're not going to sit there and think, yeah, but I made thousands.
Yeah.
Are you, Bri?
No, you don't.
And that's a very deep thing to say, but it's true. It's just...
And the other side of things of sitting in your car for many hours at the weekend just to get somewhere, that's not going to what you're going to remember, or you'll remember it with annoyance, but you remember the day you had in the end, where it's like you can amplify that here because you're not going to be spending the time in the car, or if you do, you're going to be ended up somewhere amazing, and you'll probably be the only ones there anyway, and it's you don't know that until you move here, and that's what you're trying to say before. It's like people come here, all right, you make sacrifices because you might not get in as much money, but then you're not going to want to spend the money because you're doing different things, aren't you?
100%.
Apart from buying a great tent or a trailer tent or something, that's what you're going to invest your money on. Yeah. And when you get to where you're going, you're going to be the only ones in the campsite, or the campsite's going to be just about right, not going to be mad. I remember going to campsites in the UK up around the Lake District. oh my goodness, they were huge campsites, weren't they? And at the weekend, they were just heaving and everything was just a bit wild and a bit too much, wasn't it?
That's
like,
when
you
we
know,
were wild, though. We didn't care.
I
We were
know,
young.
but you know what I mean? It was just like every man and his dog seemed to be in the same campsite. And it was just like, God, well, there's me 2-inch square there, you know, queues to get in the toilets.
I think you make, like you say, you make sacrifices, you make changes, but they are for the better. They are for what you came for in the first place. They're for time. They're just, you're swapping that for this. And that is why you come to New Zealand.
Yeah, you
And
tend to be a unique person that comes to New Zealand.
you do.
Yeah.
You do.
And
You're
it's
listening
because
to
you want
this.
these special things.
Yeah, you're listening to this. That means you are a person that lives outside the box, or certainly they think outside.
Different.
You think
Yeah.
outside the box. But again, going back to that thing of these are very valid fears, but hopefully this is just throwing some light and just uncovering all that for you. Don't forget as well, before we move on to number 3, we have got another podcast, and I always assume that people know about this, but I was talking
It's
to
weird,
someone.
isn't it?
Yeah, I was talking to someone in the community the other day, and I said, "Oh, the It's a Drama podcast," and they said, "Oh, what's It's a Drama?" And I said, "Oh, that's our other podcast," you know. And I just assumed. So our It's a Drama podcast is a very personal podcast that we talk about our life in New Zealand, obviously, but we also talk about raising our kids, you know, our teenagers, our young adults now, our life with them. We talk about travel, about being a married couple, and just life, what life brings to you and how to make light of it, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of stuff on New Zealand
It's a
in
comedy
there, isn't it?
podcast, but it's just, it's a very light-hearted
yeah.
podcast. But yes, there is a ton of stuff on New Zealand because
It's where NZhead was born.
it was.
Yeah.
For the first few years, I'm going to say for the first three years of that, or maybe even 4 years of that podcast, of the It's a Drama podcast, all we did was talked about New Zealand. It started off with me and Sonny, who was then 18. We started the podcast and we would talk all about being a kid in New Zealand and raising, you know, doing all different things in New Zealand. And then it evolved to me and Bri talking about New Zealand. And then we took all the New Zealand and stuff and decided to put it onto NZ Ahead podcast. But the It's a Drama podcast is still going. And like I say, so that's
160 episodes, I believe.
Yeah, it is. And it is the number one, it's 2% of podcasts in the whole world.
The top 2% of podcasts in the world.
I'm
Yeah,
very, very proud of that.
It's ranked in a few countries now, number 1 in places and travel in the charts, as in the weekly charts as they happen.
get
Peak
us.
positions,
Top of
number
the
1
charts.
in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
what's that?
Some country you've never heard of.
It was weird because it's Japan. Obviously, we ranked number 1 in New Zealand, and it's just some weird places. I can't remember off the top of my head now.
So we would love you to go and listen to that too. It's a Drama. And please, if you would love to do us a favour, if you enjoying this show and you get something out of this show, if you could leave us a review, that would be fantastic. So wherever you're listening to this podcast or the It's a Drama podcast or whichever one you want to do, or both if you're really inclined, just scroll down and find out where to leave a review. And that would mean the world to us.
Yeah.
So moving on to number 3, and
Yes.
this is a very personal subject that we've discussed whether or not to talk about this. And you know what? All of our content is based upon transparency and realness and truth, and just being as honest as we can with you, because that's what we're about, and that's what we know you love. And at the moment, my mum 6 weeks ago was diagnosed with lung cancer, terminal lung cancer that's metastasized to the brain. And so we are going through that. And the third fear that I want to address that relates to this is the fear that leaving your family at home, wherever you are now listening to this, and something terrible happening. So they get cancer, they get terminal cancer, they've only got whatever, you know, it's every child's fear. When I say child, I mean us, fear.
Yeah, well, as a child.
If something happens to my mum and dad, or to my aunt that I'm so close to, or my brother, what if something happens and I'm not there? And that's what we just want to talk about in point number 3.
Yes.
And after thinking about this for how to come about and tell you this, all I can say, without going into great detail, because like I say, we talk about that on our other podcast, but without going into great detail, all I will say is this. With Mum being ill as she is at the moment, the biggest thing that has come out of this for me is that she wants me to carry on my life as normal. She constantly says to me, you just get on, thank you for being here, but you just need to get on with what you're doing. And the guilt side of me, like as a daughter, constantly thinks I should be there 24/7.
Yeah.
But the reality of that, and that's why I want to say this to you if you're listening to this and thinking, what happens if something happens? My mum just lives up the road. But the reality is you have your own life and you're not just going to drop absolutely everything and spend every day, every minute of the day sitting by your mum's bedside or on a bench in the garden, holding her hand. As much as you think, oh, that's what I'd want to and I should be, you're not going to do that. My mum wouldn't want that, and you're not going to do it because you've got your own kids, you've got your own husband or wife or partner or whatever, and you've got a life and you've got a job and you've got a house and you've got a garden and you've got animals and you've got all the other things, and you have to get on with your life. That doesn't mean to say you're not thinking about that person constantly, and that doesn't mean to say you can't go there when you want to or if you can. But what I want to say is my brother is in England and my sister is in Gisborne, 10 hours away. And there is no, how can I say this? There is no, I'm seeing mum more than you, therefore I care more than you feeling going on here. It's all equal. My sister is phoning and my brother phones her every day. It's just, it's again, it's like going back to that thing we were talking about with the family bride. Yeah. You're still here, even though, and I'm talking for my brother and sister now, and because you're still here, you're still there for them, you're still supporting them. And I don't want you to think that just because you stay in America or England or Canada or South Africa, that when something like this happens, you're going to be there by the bedside, holding their hand and going every day. Now I've got everything else can be dropped because this is me. Now I'm here. It doesn't work like that.
Well, it doesn't. Normal life doesn't work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Because if you've got a high, doesn't matter what job you've got, because you need to go to work. Otherwise, if you don't have to go to work, then you've got obviously that much money. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But you're going to go and do your job, whether it's a doctor or whether it's a plumber.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got all this work to do. All right, I might be able to come and see you in the evening, but it's, or who's looking after the kids or whatever it is. It's just like you've got your own life. And unless mum comes and lives with you or dad comes and lives with you, if they're that bad, it's just like, well, it doesn't happen. And,
I can't talk for whether your mum came and lived with you or your dad came to live with you because...
No, well, we didn't have that option with me, but that's what I'm saying. It's like everything's different. I know when we were coming over here, we said, right, hey, let's have a contingency and we'll put some money in there. If anything goes wrong, then that's our flights back to the UK. After about 4 years, and that mum and dad have been out here by then, that contingency gets paid and not paid, gets spent on something else, doesn't it? Like, it's a new car or whatever it is or whatever. And then when the tragedy happened with my mum, well, it's not so much a tragedy, it was inevitable it was going to happen. My mum passed. You just get on the next flight home. I'd spoke to my mum a week before and said, how are you feeling? That I'm going to come over and see you. And she's like, no, you're not. I'm absolutely fine. David's coming over. My brother, he lives in the States. Coming over sometime before Christmas, and then literally 7 days later, my mum passes, and you're like, oh my goodness. So I get on the first flight by myself and just get back to be with the family, and that's how you deal with it. I was there, I don't know what, 12 hours later than what it would have been, or 24 hours later than what it would have been, because we used to live 200 miles away in Bath to where she lives, so. Yes, I could have been down there for my family within 4 hours or something like that. So I was there within 24 hours of getting the call. Mm. That's how quick you get on the next plane and go home. And realistically, so I wasn't there for a little bit longer. But if I'd been working, yes, you might have finished. But if I had a type of job that I couldn't, if I was operating on someone, you just what would you do? Like, you cancel everything tomorrow and,
And this is that thing as well. And this is why, and I really hope that this isn't coming across as being flippant.
No, it's not
because
cold,
it's
is
certainly
it?
not. It's certainly not meant to be like that. I'm
These are the
giving you
fears,
the
aren't they?
honest. Yes, it is, and I'm giving you the honest truth of what it feels like, because I am racked with guilt every day. At the moment, I sit down and I think, what am I doing? Making a podcast? What am I doing? Writing a post for my blog? What am I thinking? Making that YouTube? I should be with my mum. I should be. But we've got bills to pay.
You need the money to come in, don't you? Yeah.
I've got dinners to make for tonight. I've got, like I say, bedding to wash. But you feel that guilt. And then this morning it suddenly dawned on me, and that's why I wanted to bring it to the podcast. Our daughter Tess, I keep saying my daughter, but our daughter Tess lives in Wellington. She's moved down there because she wants to pursue a career in musical theatre. She's got her own flat with a boyfriend, absolutely loving it. Now, this morning, as I was sitting there crying and feeling sorry for myself and feeling guilty and thinking, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be with my mum. What am I even thinking? What a bad daughter am I that I'm not over there right now making her breakfast and looking after her, even though she's got a husband. But you know what you do. You just do that. That is what you do. I suddenly thought to myself, has it ever crossed my mind once to think, I wish Tessa was here? How selfish is Tessa? She should give up her life in Wellington and she should come home and stroke my hair and make me feel better. I would hate that.
Yeah.
That's the last thing.
Most parents don't want their children to suffer.
And that's my point.
Well, not so much suffer, but just,
that's my point. Yeah. It's like, show me one parent that would say to you, no. You
need to be with me.
I don't want you to go and live your dream. I don't want you to go and do what you want to do and live the life that you always want to do, because what if I get ill and I want you here? I'm sorry, but they might think that to themselves. I secretly think, I wish you wouldn't move away, Tess. But reality, if Tess said to me, okay, I'm moving back because I want to be with you because I've heard you're really upset because of Mama, then I would say, no, you're not doing that. And that's the point I want to make is you're still going to be there for your mum and dad or your auntie or your uncle, your brother, whatever. Of course you are. You're not, although not in person, like as much as you'd like Bryce said, and it goes back to the point number one of it's the quality of time that you've got with them, not the little snatched, is everything all right? I've brought some shopping around. There you go. Right, I've got to go anyway. I've got to pick the kids up. I'll see you later. That sort of
stressed.
Yeah, that sort of time.
Yeah. Oh, it's horses for courses. It really is. It's a hard thing to put your finger on. Everyone's situation is going to always be different. But we're just trying to. It's not alleviate the fears, but just to make you aware. Yes, these fears are there. And these are the main reasons why people end up not making that move, which is a guilt thing at the end of the day, a majority of the time, because you think I need to be there for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, we didn't have kids to think that they're going to be there for us. I've never thought that with my kids. I don't know. It's just something not in my mind, that they need to be here for me to look after me if I get ill. It's just like, what happens, and it's I can hopefully we'll be okay,
Oh, they better be bloody.
But do you know what I mean? Yeah, but that's just the thing. My dad's never said to me, "You need to come home and look after me." He's 90 years old next year, and it's just like
it's like you say, it's the guilt thing.
It is,
but also it's again not being not keeping this being kind and keeping it in mind that some people have got such amazing relationships with their mum and their dad, or like I say, their uncle or whatever, that they just can't bear the thought of leaving them.
Yeah.
And if that really, really is the case, then don't.
But why were you thinking of moving in the first place?
I want to just, if that's really, really the case, then don't move.
Yeah.
That's fine.
If it's going to be too much, then it's like, is it really worth it?
But if you're doing it and thinking in your mind, God, I've always wanted to go to New Zealand. That's our dream. Me and my partner sit and we talk about that, and it's one of those things that just won't go away. I can't stop thinking about it. And one of these fears that we've talked about today is stopping you. Then I really, really hope that it sheds some light on it from a couple who are sitting in New Zealand that have been through and are going through those exact same fears that you've got now. I just hope that what we've discussed today eases things a little bit.
Well, it's real, isn't it? It's that that's what we've always tried to be here. It's not like we've always said, not the London milk and honey. It's just reality. And yes, this could happen to you or will happen. Inevitably, it will happen. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and just going through these things with you, because to be honest, it's been really therapeutic for me too.
Yeah,
it's
but it is
really,
because
really lovely to talk about it. And don't forget that we do our personal stuff over on the It's a Drama podcast, where there's a podcast like this every single week where we talk about what's happening in life and travel, like I say, and money. And you can also sign up for our free 5-day video guide, where you will find out more about the community that I was talking about earlier and that Bri was talking about earlier. And you can find that by going to www.nzahead.com/free.
Yeah.
And when you get there, that'll be 5 days of free 5-day video guide, where you get a video every day for 5 days.
For 5 days,
yeah.
And then the option to join up
The
and
community.
everything else after that.
But listen to your heart. That's all I'll say to you. This is your life, your family's life, your life. Listen to your heart and just do what it is that it's calling you to do. And until next time, I just want to say thank you for being here, and I will speak to you soon.
Yeah, so like I say, moving to New Zealand, toughest thing you'll probably ever do, and everything after that will be a little bit easier. It really will, because you'll be here by then. And hey, the worst case scenario, you can always go home.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
that's it. As in whatever you call home. Eventually you would call New Zealand as your home. But until next time, kia kaha, which is stay strong, and kia u, stay true. And we'll see you on the Ends of the Head podcast next time.
Okay. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
You know when you move to a new country and you go to a barbecue and you're all standing in the room and then you say something and then the room just goes silent and you're like, oh, shouldn't have said that. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. Apparently, there are some things that you should never ever say when you live in New Zealand.
Just the atmosphere at the table, it was just bang.
Let's jump into the episode and find out what those 7 things are.